What if I told you that no one can actually make you angry? Not your enemies, not your boss, not even the people who hurt you most. The Stoics believe something radical, that you are disturbed not by what happens, but by your judgment of it. That between what happens and how you respond, there is a space, and if you learn to master that space, you will become mentally untouchable. A fortress of calm in a chaotic world. In this video, you'll learn how to never get angry or bothered by anyone again. Not through suppression, but through Stoic clarity. Welcome to the path of inner mastery. Most people spend their entire lives convinced that other people are responsible for their anger. They say things like, "He made me so mad," or "She pushed me too far." But the Stoics saw this belief for what it truly is. A dangerous illusion. Because no one can actually make you angry, only you can. The source of your disturbance is never the event itself, never the insult, the betrayal, or the tone of their voice. It is always your interpretation. Epictetus, once a slave, later a philosopher of immense inner strength, wrote, "It is not events that disturb people, but their judgments about them." And in that sentence lies the foundation of emotional invincibility. An insult, by itself, is just sound in the air. A betrayal, by itself, is just an action in the past. What turns it into suffering is the meaning you attach to it. It's not their behavior that enslaves your mind, it's your reaction to that behavior. The Stoic does not try to change the world to avoid being offended. He changes the way he interprets the world. He doesn't say, "I must stop people from being rude." He says, "I must stop giving them power over my peace." And that shift, small in words, enormous, in effect changes everything. Because now, your emotional life is no longer a public playground. You become sovereign. You stop being a puppet on strings pulled by strangers' opinions, careless comments, or accidental slights. You learn to pause. And in that pause, in that moment of clarity between impulse and response, your freedom is reborn. When someone speaks harshly to you, your first impulse might be to defend yourself, to fire back, to prove something. But the Stoic has trained himself to recognize that first reaction as nothing more than a spark. And sparks only become fires when you feed them. Most people are walking piles of dry wood, ready to ignite at the slightest provocation. The Stoic, by contrast, is soaked in self. He watches it pass, he breathes through it, and it disappears. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of Rome, surrounded by pressure, betrayal, and expectation, wrote to himself, not to the world, but to his own soul, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He didn't write that to sound wise, he wrote it to survive. He understood that the battlefield of life isn't out there, it's in here in the mind. The moment you believe that someone else is responsible for your reaction, you have handed over your sword, your shield, and your freedom. But when you take full ownership, radical ownership of your thoughts and responses, you become untouchable. The world may rage, people may insult, life may disappoint, but none of that controls you unless you let it. To never be angry is not to be numb. It is to be clear. It is to see with such precision that you can separate what is truly harmful from what is simply noise. Most anger is just noise, a reaction to your unmet expectations, your pride, your imagined injuries. The Stoic knows this, and so he reprograms the way he perceives the world. He does not demand perfection from people. He expects their flaws, prepares for them, and remains unmoved. When insulted, he does not think, "How dare they?" but rather, "Of course, that's human. Why would I expect anything else?" This way of thinking may seem cold to some, but it is not cold. It is controlled. It is not heartless. It is principled. It is the mind choosing mastery over mood, clarity over chaos. Because once you realize that anger is not given to you, but chosen by you, you also realize something far more powerful. You can choose something else. You can choose peace. Anger often wears the mask of strength. It flares up in voices that rise, fists that clench, and eyes that burn with the fire of perceived injustice. It pretends to be power, but beneath the surface, anger is nothing more than an uncontrolled response, a loss of inner command. To the Stoics, there is no virtue in rage. There is only vulnerability. Because when you become angry, you are no longer acting, you are reacting. You are no longer choosing, you are being pulled. And that loss of agency, that surrender of rational control, is not strength. It is slavery. Marcus Aurelius knew this well. As emperor of Rome, he had every excuse to justify anger. Betrayals in his court, lies in the Senate, wars on the borders, pressures no ordinary man could imagine. And yet, in the privacy of his personal reflections, he wrote, The best revenge is to be unlike him who did the injury. What does this mean? It means that when someone wrongs you, the moment you become like them, loud, hostile, impulsive, you have already lost. You may feel momentarily satisfied in your retaliation, but you've paid for that moment with your dignity. You've allowed the worst in someone else to awaken the worst in you, and the Stoic refuses to let that happen. Instead of retaliation, the Stoic chooses redirection. Instead of lashing out, he looks within. He asks not, how do I defeat this person, but what kind of person do I want to be right now? Because to be disturbed by someone's behavior is to allow their character to dictate your state of mind. But the wise man lives by principle, not provocation. He is not pushed by the moods of others. He is moved only by virtue. Seneca once wrote, "Anger is a temporary madness. Control your passion, or it will control you." And he was right. How many lives have been destroyed in seconds by uncontrolled rage? How many relationships fractured? How many words spoken that can never be taken back, all in the name of justified anger? But the Stoic sees no honor in giving in to such a fleeting force. He knows that a sharp tongue may feel powerful, but a restrained one is far stronger. Silence, chosen deliberately, is not weakness, it is command. And in that silence, the wise man remains undefeated. The tragedy of anger is that it tricks us into believing we are standing up for ourselves, when in fact we are standing down from our higher self. It seduces us with the illusion of control, but delivers only chaos. The Stoic rejects that illusion. He does not seek revenge. He seeks excellence. He does not aim to win arguments. He aims to win his own respect. And in doing so, he becomes unshakable, not because no one offends him, but because offense has no place to land in a heart that is ruled by reason. So the next time you feel that heat rising in your chest, that impulse to strike back, that desire to be right at all costs, pause. Ask yourself, will this reaction make me proud tomorrow, or ashamed? Ask yourself, am I controlling the moment, or am I being controlled by it? The Stoic knows, not in conquering others, but in conquering yourself. Because at the end of the day, anger is easy. Anyone can explode, anyone can shout, anyone can demand, but to remain calm, measured, and unmoved in the face of ignorance, disrespect, or cruelty that requires true mastery. And that kind of mastery is the rarest power of all. To the untrained mind, an insult feels like an attack, something to defend against, to fight back, to extinguish with louder words or sharper gestures. But the Stoic does not meet insult with resistance. He meets it with curiosity. Seneca, one of the most psychologically refined minds of ancient philosophy, taught that an insult says far more about the speaker than it ever could about the target. When someone mocks you, slanders you, tries to humiliate you, they are not revealing truth. They are revealing themselves, their bitterness, their lack of discipline, their craving for control. And so, the Stoic does not respond with pain, but with understanding. He sees the insult for what it is, a mirror, not a mirror of his own flaws, but a reflection of the other person's inner chaos. And because he is no longer deceived into thinking that every word must be a dagger, he becomes immune to offense. This immunity is not apathy, it is awareness. He does not numb himself to life. He studies it, sees through it, and transforms it. When insulted, he asks, why is this person speaking this way? What wound are they speaking from? What fear are they hiding? What ignorance are they trapped in? And in asking these questions, he no longer takes the words personally. He converts pain into perspective. Seneca invites us to look at those who provoke us the same way a doctor looks at a patient. With observation, not outrage. A person yelling on the street, they're not the enemy. They're sick with ego. Someone lying behind your back, not a villain. A soul terrified of being seen. And once you begin to view people not through the lens of friend or threat, but awake or asleep, everything changes. You stop expecting wisdom from the foolish. You stop demanding maturity from the immature. You stop being surprised by what should be obvious. Most people are struggling with themselves, and they are projecting that struggle onto others. So the Stoic, rather than matching energy, holds his own. He doesn't descend into the same emotional frequency as the aggressor. He remains where he is, grounded, balanced, clear. He does not need to fight because he is not threatened. He does not need to prove because he knows who he is. And that certainty, that calm knowing, is more powerful than 1,000 comebacks. While others play checkers with emotions, he plays chess with perception. He is never caught off guard because he never assumed the world owed him kindness. In fact, part of Stoic training involves expecting insult, not in a paranoid way, but in a prepared way. The Stoic begins his day, as Marcus Aurelius once did, with a quiet reminder. You will meet people who are arrogant, dishonest, rude, and selfish. This is not cynicism, it is clarity. Because when you expect the imperfect, you don't overreact to it. You receive it like the rain. Perhaps unpleasant, but never surprising. And like the rain, when others shout, the Stoic listens. When others slander, he reflects. When others provoke, he studies. Not them, but himself. Why did that bother me? What wound did that trigger? What am I still attached to that gives them power over me? In this way, even hostility becomes a tool for growth, because nothing reveals our inner world like our reactions, and nothing refines that world like choosing stillness where most would choose chaos. This is the quiet superpower of Stoicism, not to block emotion, but to see through it, not to be cold, but to be composed, not to be better than others, but to be better than the old self, the one who could be provoked by ignorance, controlled by insult, unmade by petty work. That version is gone now, replaced by someone untouchable not because they are hard, but because they are whole. There is a moment, small, silent, and often missed, that determines everything. It is the space between what happens to you and how you respond. Most people never see that space. They are provoked, and they explode. They are insulted, and they react. Life taps them on the shoulder, and they swing blindly in return. Their emotions sit in the driver's seat, steering every word, every look, every judgment. But the Stoic lives differently. He guards that space. He expands it. He steps into it like a sacred ground, because he knows that's where his freedom lives. The Stoic understands that mastery is not found in controlling others, but in controlling that invisible gap. And within that gap, he breathes, he waits, he watches, and then, with deliberation not impulse, he chooses his response. The world around him may be moving fast, but his mind remains slow, intentional, unhurried. And in that stillness, he finds the power that anger pretends to offer but never delivers. Control. Marcus Aurelius, in his meditations, reminded himself daily, if you are disturbed, it is not by the thing itself, but by your judgment of it. He wrote that not once, but again and again, as if reminding the deepest part of his soul that no insult, no betrayal, no moment of chaos had the power to shake his center unless he allowed it. This wasn't positive thinking. It was mental training, a kind of emotional martial art, and it began with the pause. When you pause, even for a breath, you reclaim the authority that the world constantly tries to steal. You are no longer reactive, you are responsible. You are not dancing to the tune of every emotion that enters your chest. You are listening, but not obeying. Feeling, but not flinching. That breath becomes a barrier between you and regret. Between you and saying the thing you'll wish you could unsay. Between you and becoming someone you're not proud of. And what happens in that space? Clarity. You begin to ask the questions that reactive people never do. Is this worth my peace? Will this matter tomorrow? What kind of person do I want to be in this moment? The Stoic does not always feel calm. He acts with calm. He does not deny emotion, but he directs it. He does not suppress the fire, but he contains it, shapes it, and uses its heat to forge better action. This way of being is not passive. It is profoundly active. It is mental strength, spiritual discipline, and moral courage woven into one decision after another, all beginning in the silence between stimulus and response. It is not the absence of feeling. It is the maturity of mastery. And while others exhaust themselves riding the waves of emotion, the Stoic stands quietly at the shore, unmoved, observant, and free. Because in the end, what makes a man powerful is not how loudly he can speak, but how deeply he can listen to his instincts, to his habits, and to the moment unfolding in front of him. And every time he pauses instead of reacts, he becomes someone slightly more invincible than he was the day before. There is a dangerous idea in modern thinking, that emotional control is something you either have or you don't, that some people are just naturally calm, while others are hot-headed. But the Stoics rejected this myth entirely. To them, calm was not a gift, it was a discipline, a skill, a habit formed by intention, reflection, and relentless practice. They did not wait for peace to arrive. They trained for it, every single day. They began with journaling, not to record events, but to examine their minds. Marcus Aurelius, ruler of the most powerful empire on earth, wrote quietly to himself, questioning his reactions, challenging his assumptions, and reminding himself of what truly mattered. He didn't write for praise. He wrote to become better, to stay clear, to be unmoved by flattery or criticism. That's how the Stoic mind is forged. Not in crisis, but in preparation for it. And preparation comes through a practice called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of adversity. Each morning, the Stoic imagines what could go wrong: insults, delays, betrayal, misunderstanding. But this is not pessimism. It's psychological armor. When life unfolds just as you imagined it might, you are no longer caught off guard. You are not surprised by rudeness. You are not offended by disrespect. You are not shaken by what you already saw coming. And so the Stoic walks into the world with a different posture. He does not beg life to be easy. He trains himself to be ready. And that readiness turns the chaos of the world into a training ground for virtue. Each encounter, each irritation, each petty insult becomes a test, not of the other person, but of himself. Will I remain centered? Will I choose discipline over ego? Will I respond with wisdom, not weakness? Because this is the core of Stoic practice. Using the world to refine the self. You don't need a temple or a mountaintop to become calm. You need only your daily life. The noise, the stress, the conversations, the delays. These are your teachers. These are your tools. And every time you face them with poise, you chip away at the false self. The one that reacts, complains, explodes, and you uncover something deeper, something stronger, something quieter. It's the part of you that doesn't need to be right all the time, doesn't need to win every argument, doesn't need to control the opinions of others, because it already knows who it is. It already lives by a code, and that code is not conditional. It's not fragile. It's not for sale. It says, I will not allow the world to dictate the quality of my mind. I will not give away the most sacred part of me, my peace, for the cheapest price, someone else's approval or offense. And when you live like this, not occasionally, but consistently, you begin to notice something extraordinary. The same words that used to bother you now pass through you. The same behaviors that once triggered you now amuse you. The same chaos that once controlled you now reveals how free you've become. Not because the world has changed, but because you have. Calm is not something you're born with, it's something you build. Decision by decision, breath by breath. To be Stoic doesn't mean you never feel anger. It means anger never owns you. You have a choice: to react like everyone else, or to respond like someone who's unshakable. So the next time someone tries to pull you into their storm, remember, you are not their puppet. You are your own master. If this video helped you build your inner fortress, share it. Subscribe. And keep walking the path of wisdom, because the strongest person in the room is always the calmest one.